The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Welcome to the Jesse Blake Sports Report. Whether this is your first time here, your last time here, or somewhere in between, I appreciate that you're here today so that we can talk about We So Done with the 90s, a TikTok/NBA Twitter trend where Gen Z, mainly Gen Z, TikTokers and Twitter users are trying to disparage anything that came out of 90s and pre-90s basketball. It mainly deals with them ending the GOAT debate. Like, the GOAT debate is over. Michael Jordan sucked. 90s basketball was awful. LeBron James is the GOAT. Here's a little sampling of what you can find on the interwebs this week.
Remember MJ wore 45 and came back and scored 55? Everybody on the court was pure shit. He shot the ball 37 times and he shot 11 free throws. He's supposed to score 55. Film don't lie. It's time to expose the truth.
We are witnessing the end of the GOAT debate in front of our very eyes, all because people are stopping and watching a game of basketball in the 1980s and 90s. There was clips of Michael Jordan, you know, our GOAT, not even being guarded. Whose defense is that? Can you imagine leaving Stephen Curry open just willy-nilly in the finals? No.
Magic Johnson's crossovers look like he about to fall over. This is why I always separate best and greatest, because Magic could be the greatest PG, but this man is not better than Steph Curry. And if you're under the age of 25 talking about he is, you haven't even seen a full Magic Johnson game in your life. Stop lying. Now the truth is getting exposed because people are going back and watching the games, and you got the unks out here screaming out their phone ready to crash out like Jordan their girl. We're literally looking at the games and the old heads are trying to gaslight us into telling us that what we're seeing is not true.
So a lot of it deals in some specific particulars that the people who are perpetuating the We So Done with the 90s trend are taking. They're taking Jordan not having a left hand. They're saying that he's Jaylen Brown with a shoe deal. Jaylen Brown is famously known for not having a great left hand. Michael Jordan, they're calling him Jaylen Brown with a shoe deal. They're saying he can't go left. You know, there's one clip of Jordan going around the back from his right hand to his right hand. That means he was garbage. They're talking about him being left wide open and how defenses in the 90s were awful. There's a lot of shooters, and they'll take these clips and saying, oh, look at this shooter being Scottie Pippen being left wide open for a three, and he misses this three. And I can't show you any of this footage because I don't want to be demonetized on my channel for copyright footage or anything like that. So that's why I continue to just describe it instead of just showing it to you. And they talk about how big guys had no post moves. There's like have a short compilation of Patrick Ewing and how he had no post moves and that sort of nonsense. And I feel like, one, it's a lot of trolling. It's trolling old heads who grew up in the 90s and who revere Michael Jordan and are big fans of that era of basketball. It's a lot of trolling by the younger generation to those people. But it's also so disingenuous to not acknowledge that things get better over time. If your iPhone from 2010 worked the same as your iPhone from 2024, it would be absurd. Like, sports also get better with time. If you look at any sport from 30 years ago, because we've reached a point where we do have some distance from the 90s and from that era of basketball. It's cool that we're at this point now in just the timeline of NBA basketball, and that there's truly a distance and a whole new generation of people looking at that type of game and the game from that era. But it's disingenuous to not acknowledge that you must take those games in the context of the skill of basketball as it had developed to that point. Michael Jordan would be a completely different player if he grew up in 2000, if he was born in 2002, entered the league in 2022, and grew up like watching Steph Curry play basketball and watch Kobe. Could you imagine if Jordan had watched Kobe? Well, first of all, there'd be no Kobe in the way he is, because Kobe is everything because of Jordan. But if Jordan was born after that era of basketball and is in this era, he'd still probably be the GOAT, because the things we revere about Michael Jordan are his work ethic and his drive and his determination and the way he always won during that 6-year span of those 6 championships and the years in between, you know, the 6 individual years of those championships, because they happen in 2 different three-peats. But that's besides the point. We need to understand when we're talking about sports that yes, they were worse 30 years ago. And yes, the players now, if you plop them down into a game 30 years ago, they probably whoop all of their butts. The bench players of today are probably better than the starters of yesteryear, but that does not mean that the starters of yesteryear are not good in the context of when they played. Let's just all be honest about that. It's a little, I don't know if it's bothersome to the point where, hey, you got to get all worked up about it, but it just needs to be acknowledged that we are all taking this completely out of context and trying to ruin a perfectly fine game from 30 years ago. Did we not all just watch The Last Dance 2 years ago during the pandemic? 4 years ago now. I have no idea when the pandemic was. In 2020, did we not all sit there in our homes when we couldn't go outside and watch The Last Dance and understand why Michael Jordan was so revered? It had nothing, like, outside of all of the basketball play. That is why he is. And they're trying to end the GOAT debate. They're trying to say, yes, LeBron James is the greatest player ever because look at the era he plays in and what he accomplished during his era, as opposed to Michael Jordan and what he did in his era. Let's all just be honest here. It's different. It is a different world. It is a different context. It is not the same at all. It is apples to oranges. I'm sure if LeBron James was born in 1962 and he played in that era of basketball, the kids of today would be screaming about how somebody, Ja Morant or Anthony Edwards is so much better than 1962 LeBron James. I don't know. That's all I got to say on that. Also, I wanted to tack on here in this video that women's college basketball today has been absolutely fantastic and unreal. The Big Ten championship went down today. Two games in particular I just want to talk about. The Big Ten championship with Iowa and Caitlin Clark. They won. They ended up winning in overtime. And at halftime, Caitlin Clark had 4 points. She was 2 for 13 from the field, 0 for 9 from 3, and the second half and OT, she had 34 points, 12 assists, 7 rebounds, 5 3-pointers, and a Big 10 championship. Unreal comeback, unreal turnaround performance by Iowa and Caitlin Clark, and now it's on to the NCAA tournament, and the women's side is so much more fun than the men's side with so many storylines going on, because in the SEC championship, LSU was playing South Carolina. South Carolina is undefeated on the year, #1 team in the country. LSU has all of the big stars. Their head coach is a star. Angel Reese is on that team. LSU goes out there and they get real chippy against South Carolina. There's a big brawl towards the end of the game. Half the players in the entire game are thrown out after a giant push that happens at half court, at mid court. A fan, one of the players' brothers, I shouldn't say a fan, one of the players' brothers hops the scorer's table, runs out onto the court, into the whole scuffle. It was a huge bit of drama that happened there in the SEC championship. And South Carolina ended up winning, remaining undefeated on the year, heading into the March Madness tournament. And that's something I'm going to keep an eye on, and we're going to be talking about here a lot in the next coming weeks, because the men's side is fun because it's the traditional one we're going to make a bracket for, but the women's side has all the stars and the drama. So we're going to see if Caitlin Clark and Iowa can pull off a championship in her final year. LSU, if they can go back-to-back, pull off a couple upsets, or if South Carolina just runs the table. Like, it's so much fun. I can't believe there's storylines of women's college basketball, and it's the most entertaining basketball going on right now. Fun times in the sport in NCAA basketball. So that's it for me today. Thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere in the world. You should just be listening or watching this right now, and I appreciate you. We're heading towards 2,000 subscribers. We're 300 away. We picked up a lot more last night. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's get 300 more and get 2,000 subscribers on this channel. Let's try and do that. That's it. I will see you again very soon. Good night from Toronto.
And that is how it's done.
The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Jesse Blake, the guy that likes to hear his name twice in one sentence. Sure, I know him. No, he doesn't have an ego at all.